to have online Ambika Sadgunanathan, Iromi Pereira, Linda Rajapaksha, Rasika Jayakodi, and Brai Kali Baltazar, to join a discussion on the theme of COVID-19 impacts, inequality, and solutions. My name is Priyanka Hettiarachchi, and I'm the country representative for the Westminster Foundation for Democracy. The Westminster Foundation for Democracy is a United Kingdom-based independent public body working to strengthen democracy in different countries. In Sri Lanka, we collaborate with institutions, parliamentarians, parties, officials, civil society, and community and others. I want to say a little bit about the format for this morning's discussion. Each of our 5 speakers will reflect on the theme of COVID-19 impacts, inequality, and solutions for about 5 minutes each. This will be followed by a question and answer session. We expect to have around 2 rounds of Q&A, and then we aim to conclude within the hour. But before we start, may I please invite each of our speakers to introduce themselves before we kick off. Ambika, may I start with you, please?
Sure. Thank you, Priyanka. Thank you for inviting me to join this discussion. I think it's very timely. My name is Ambika Sadgunanathan. I'm a lawyer, I'm a human rights advocate. And for the past nearly 5 years, until the 6th of March, I was also a member of the Human Rights Commission of Sri Lanka.
Thank you, Ambika. Iromi, you next.
Hi, thanks for having us, Priyanka. My name is Iromi Pereira. I am a Colombo-based researcher and activist. My work mainly focuses on land rights and housing, with a particular focus on Colombo and our experience in becoming a world-class city.
Melinda?
Thank you, Priyanka, for inviting me. My name is Milinda Rajapaksha. I'm a politician. I have been a member of the Colombo Municipal Council for last 2.5 years now. And I have been a founding member of the Sri Lanka Podujana Party and executive member of the youth wing of the Sri Lanka Podujana Party. And have been in the political sphere from the university time with the SLFP. I have been chairing the Committee on Resource Management and Corruption Prevention of the Colombo Municipal Council. I worked for International Planned Parenthood Federation. Then I worked for the United Nations Development Program. Then I worked for the government as the director of the National Youth Services Council.
Thank you. Rasika?
Hi, good morning. I'm Rasika Jayakodi. I'm one of the founding members of the professionals for Samagijana Balawege, the professionals wing of Mr. Sajid Premadas's new party. And before I joined active politics, I was in the media space. I was a journalist and I was the editor of the Daily News newspaper. Then I was a consultant to Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority. Then I was also a consultant to the Ministry of Ports, Shipping and Southern Development. So we are in the process of formalizing a political party and its affiliate organizations. Yeah, that's where I stand.
Thank you, Rasika. And
Priyanka, small addition on behalf of Rasika and me. Rasika and me are co-convening the cross-party youth platform called NextGenSL. It's a collection of youth wings who are representing the parliament.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Brai, can I ask you to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Thank you, Priyanka, and the Westminster Foundation for the invitation and for creating this space for us to talk about inequality and solutions. My name is Brai Kali Baltazar. I have a media background, but I'd like to, in terms of the designation for the purpose of this conversation, call myself a social activist and community organizer.
Thank you, Brai. Okay, so let's begin this session. And Ambika, may I invite you to make your opening remarks on this theme, please?
Yes. Thank you, Priyanka. I think I would like to start by maybe like a few, what I would like to call myth busting. in that COVID-19 is not an equalizer, because that is something that is being said very widely now. And it does affect everyone, but not in the same way. The way that you're affected depends on your socioeconomic status and your privilege. So I think the pandemic shows how deeply we are connected, but it also shows how far apart we are. So for example, if you take even physical distancing, that is a privilege. Like I heard Dr. Jasina say yesterday or day before about Bandar Naik with about 220 families living on 15 persons. And then we look at the frontline workers, the nurses, the vegetable vendors, the sanitation workers, those who are generally not doing well, who might not even have a living wage, for whom daily economic struggle is likely the norm and not the exception. So once again, the way the pandemic affects these people will be very different to the way that it affects even you and me. And even simple things like we do to protect ourselves, like washing hands. If you don't have plentiful running water, how are you supposed to do it? Prisoners won't be able to do it, and even many villagers who have to walk miles to get water won't be able to do it. So I think we must bust this myth that it is an equalizer, because what it has actually done is it has shown us the deep structural and systemic inequalities that have always existed in our society, but perhaps that we have glossed over and not looked at, like issues such as food insecurity, lack of a social safety net. All of that, I think, points to the failure of neoliberal economic policies that did not address these structural inequalities. So we have seen, for instance, daily wage earners, the plantation workers, and the devastating impact that the pandemic has had on their quality of life and maybe just even livelihood. So I think discrimination, marginalization are factors that we do need to look at when we look at our responses to the pandemic. That is very important. And inequality, I think, also functions in different ways, because what we have seen now also is, for instance, the way in which the law is applied. So you have hate speech against Muslims, even by popular media outlets, but no legal action is taken against them. But then you find individuals, perhaps on social media, who criticize the state action or inaction, who may be arrested. So we have to ask the question, is the law being applied equally in an equitable way? And we have, particularly in the past decade or so, touting social entrepreneurship, as the next big solution. Tech is the next big solution. But all these factors only increase inequality, because when you create wealth in a dysfunctional system without a value base that is founded on equality, equity, and non-discrimination, all that it does is increases and widens, deepens the inequality. So I would say, don't expect the millionaires and billionaires to save us through donations. It's better to ask ourselves, how much tax are these people paying? How much is that tax in percentages or, in terms of their publicly acknowledged net worth? And the other thing quickly that I would like to just talk about is rights and possible erosion of rights during the pandemic, because this is also a trend that we have seen globally, where the pandemic is used as a means to put in place emergency measures that might restrict human rights, might restrict free speech. And the danger of normalizing that, because also in our country, we have a history of the state of emergency, for instance, which has been in place for decades, and certain things being normalized through that for decades in Sri Lanka. So I think I read an article which said it's called securitizing shock doctrine. So you just make that normal. And one example of that also is, for instance, there were directions that were issued by the Inspector General of Police, against which some civil society organizations also raised their voice and critiqued that, because it said that you can't criticize state officials, but criticizing or critiquing state officials and holding them to account that forms the core of democracy. That is what it's all about. It's a citizen's civic duty to do that. Of course, you can't spread false news and you can't obstruct a state official performing their duty, but critiquing and holding to account is what being a democracy is all about. So if we are trying to curtail that, then I think those are also factors that we need to look at. And the other thing quickly is also this surveillance. Once again, the funny thing is it also shows how connected we are. This is not just in one country. You see these patterns globally. You see it in China. You can see it even in parts of Europe where you use surveillance. It's needed because they say you need to do contact tracing, but you're also gathering a lot of personal data. How is this data being protected? Who has access to this data? Will this data be misused? Will this data be used to crush dissent? Because we do need to protect public health, but there is a balance always of protecting other rights as well. So we must look at this security creep, the danger of continuing long after the pandemic is over, because this is not just about security and technology, but in a way it's also psychological, because what you do is when you call it a war, you create fear. Then you, the state, become the protector who will take care of the citizens. And what you ask from the citizens in return is that people place their unquestioning faith in your decision and do not criticize or hold you to account. Once again, antithetical to what democracy is supposed to be. So these are just a few issues that I would like to flag at the beginning, and I hope I'm within the 5 minutes.
Thank you, Ambika. Thanks very much. Iromi, may I invite you to say your opening remarks, please?
Okay, sure. I would just like to mainly touch upon how inequality in terms of how it has affected the urban poor and the homeless and daily wage workers. My focus probably will be mostly on Colombo and cities, but I think some of the ideas can be applied across the country. One key issue is that we are seeing COVID responses and policy making in an environment that doesn't particularly understand how the informal sector works, how daily wage workers work, where there is no robust data about distribution, about the kinds of work, household level data, and nor does it recognize various forms of informality. So what can you do in that kind of an environment where there is so much of an absence of information, of an understanding? And just to give a sense, just to give a concrete example, you have around 15,000 families who have been forcibly evicted or forcibly relocated to UDA-built high-rises in Colombo. And 15,000 families is not a small amount of people. And they have had existing issues ranging from debt to insecurity for women and children to a complete disconnect from their built environment, which now we're seeing completely exacerbated during this time. It is a policing of personal space. It is a policing of a way of life. And over the last month, we have seen in the various buildings, no food trucks going, and even when they do go, people tell us, what's the point? We don't have money because we work on daily wage. And what is also important to understand here is that in the absence of data, what people fail to realize is that a lot of these families are not also falling into the threshold of Samurti beneficiaries or any other kind of beneficiaries, because on a day-to-day basis, they actually do live fairly manageable lives with the income that they earn from their daily wage work or the informal livelihood. But when that source of income is completely broken at a time like this, when curfew is now has been for more than a month, the results are devastating. You can go from being a fairly manageable, comfortable family to a completely different situation at a time like this. And I think it's also important for us to, in these situations where we've created homes in spaces that are not natural to us, is to also question, is home the safest place? What does social distancing mean? What does hand washing endlessly mean to urban poor communities who don't always have the infrastructure to do these kinds of things? And just in terms of relief, the government says that they have got more than 6 billion in aid. Just in terms of relief distribution, how do we ensure that there is equitable distribution of aid? Who decides where the aid goes and what it is spent on? How do we ensure that aid is not also politicized, given that it is an election season? Because so far what we've seen is that aid is not reaching the families that do need it. And when aid does come in, it is through various political parties or private donations, because the government does not have an adequate mechanism to ensure that every single family gets what they need. And need is also quite different in this context, where right now we are only talking about need in terms of food. What about things like medicine? What about schooling? What about mental health needs? These are not just middle class needs, these are needs that cut across all families. And then how do you access those things? Most of the families don't have smartphones or even credit on their normal phones. So then how do they access information and resources that are touted about as, helplines and hotlines at a time of need? So we also have to talk about, even in the work that we do, how do we ensure that we recognize these disparities in accessing relief and resources? And we also need to push for and talk about longer term recovery. Right now, we're only talking about the recovery for right now. How do we make sure that people have food on the table? But we also need to ensure that the state has a plan for longer term recovery that not only looks at livelihood recovery, but also other vulnerabilities that women in particular face, that children face, even things like malnutrition and adequate housing. And also look at all these other issues. For example, right now we are coming to the 1 month stretch where people are looking at how to pay their rent, how to pay their utility bills. And women in particular are vulnerable to these situations where when they can't pay rent, landlords then exploit that situation, asking for sexual favors, threatening them and children. And you can say, the state can say it's illegal to throw people out, but a lot of these contracts they're not enforceable. These are not rent contracts that are legally enforceable. Sometimes they're not even written contracts. And also to recognize that when we talk about a landlord, they're not some rich guy living in Colombo 7. They're also poor people who are dependent on the rent that people pay them. So then how do you ensure that people across all these places are looked after? And I think also in the longer term, we have to address the fact that there's a serious absence of an adequate social protection mechanism. And that is also why at a time like this, we are constantly scrambling for private donations, looking for information, looking at where the vulnerabilities are. If we already had an existing system that, beyond Samurdhi, basically, that we could tap into and networks, this would be much easier. And just to end, I just want to end on the note of dignity when we are dealing with the poor. And this is a serious issue that I see not only at a state level, but also on social media, on media, and other efforts. It's almost like at a time like this, we think that if we're doing good, we don't need to think about dignity for the poor. I see pictures of people lining up for meals and packets of food, people being asked to pose for the rations that they're getting, people being photographed without their consent, the media being invited to watch informal workers who are being disinfected in broad daylight. Why is it at a time like this that we can't afford, or at any given time, we don't afford the poor any dignity? But I feel like in this particular crisis, it has been exacerbated. And we justify it by saying, oh, but they're doing good, we are getting meals, this is how we fundraise. And I feel like we need to really be more mindful about the way that we do good, because sometimes you can end up doing far worse than giving somebody a buck packet and then plastering them all over Instagram and social media. So I'll just stop there for now.
Thank you very much, Hiromi. Melinda, may I invite you to make your opening statement, please? Melinda, I think your microphone is muted.
Done. Thank you. Thanks, Priyanka. So, as discussed, I will make my remarks in Sinhala. මම හිතන්නේ අපි මම මෙතනදී කාරණා දෙකක් මතු කරන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන එකක් තමයි තරුණයෙක් විදිහට මේ වෙලාවේ මේ ප්‍රශ්නේ දිහා බලන ආකාරය. දෙවෙනි කාරණේ තමයි තරුණ දේශපාලකයෙක් විදිහට මේ ප්‍රශ්නේ දිහා බලන ආකාරය. ඒකට තරුණ දේශපාලකයෙක් දිහා මේ විදිහට මේ ප්‍රශ්නේ දිහා බලද්දි පැති දෙකක් මතුවෙනවා. එකක් තමයි මම ආණ්ඩු පක්ෂය නියෝජනය කරන දේශපාලන කණ්ඩායමට අයිති වෙනවා. ඒ නිසා මම හිතන්නේ මට විනාඩියක් දෙකක් අරගෙන මේ වැඩපිළිවෙල පිළිබඳ පැහැදිලි කිරීමක් කරන්න ඕනේ. ඊළඟට තරුණ දේශපාලකයෙක් විදිහට මට මේකේ පේන අඩුපාඩු අපිට නිවැරදි කරගත හැකි තැන් විශේෂයෙන්ම රටක් විදිහට ඉස්සරහට යද්දි මේ දැනට පවතින දේශපාලන සීමාවන්ගෙන් ඉස්සරහට ගිහිල්ලා අපිට තරුණ කණ්ඩායමක් විදිහට මොන වගේ එකතු කිරීමක් මෙහෙම නැත්නම් මේ out of the box thinking එකක් අපිට දැන් අවශ්‍යද කියන කාරණේ. මම පළවෙනි විනාඩිය ගත්තොත් ප්‍රියංග එකතු කරන්න මොකක්ද මේ වෙනකොට සිද්ධ වෙමින් පවතින්නේ කියලා. පළවෙනි රෝගියා ලංකාවේ හඳුනාගත්තට පස්සේ අපි ඒ සම්බන්ධ ජනාධිපති කාර්ය සාධක බලකාය පිහිටවනවා. ජනාධිපති කාර්ය සාධක බලකාය පිහිටවලා දවස් කීපයක් ඇතුළත පාසල් වහනවා. ඊට පස්සේ ගෙදර ඉඳන් වැඩ කරන්න කියන ඉල්ලීම එනවායි ඉරිදා වගේ වෙද්දි බදාදා විතර පළවෙනි රෝගියා හම්බෙන්නේ. ඊට පස්සේ අපි දැන් ඒ විදිහට සති 5කට ආසන්න කාලයක් ඇවිල්ලා තියෙනවා. ඒකට පළවෙනි සතිය දෙක තුන තිබ්බ මූලිකම ප්‍රශ්න තමයි ආහාර. ඊළඟට තිබුණු අනිත් ප්‍රශ්නය තමයි මුදල් වලට මොකද කරන්න කියන එක. එතකොට ආහාර ප්‍රශ්නෙත් පැති දෙකක් තිබ්බා. එකක් තමයි කොළඹින් එළිය ආහාර ප්‍රශ්නය සහ කොළඹ ආහාර ප්‍රශ්නය කියන එක. දැන් කොළඹ ආහාර ප්‍රශ්නයට වැඩි අවධානයක් යොමු වුණා කියලා මම හිතනවා. මොකද ගොඩක් මධ්‍යම පාන්තිකයෝ කෑ ගහනවා, Facebook එකේ දානවා, මීඩියා වලට කතා කරනවා. ඒ හින්දා ඒගොල්ලන්ට වැඩි අවධානයකුත් යොමු වුණා කියලා මට හිතෙනවා. මම දැන් කොළඹ නාගරික මන්ත්‍රීවරයෙක් විදිහට ඇඳිරි නීතිය තිබුණු හැම දවසකම වගේ මට මේ කොළඹ ඇවිදින්න ලැබුණා බඩු බෙදෙන වැඩවලට, නගර සභාවේ වැඩවලට, මේ එදිනෙදා වැඩ කටයුතු වලට, රාජකාරී වැඩ කටයුතු වලට. එතකොට දැන් කොළඹ නගරේ බොහෝ අයට 90%කට තමන්ගේ එදිනෙදා අවශ්‍ය ආහාර විතරක් නෙමෙයි හවසට චූන් පාන්නකින් කෑම ගන්න පුළුවන් තත්ත්වය දක්වා මේක ඇවිල්ලා තියෙනවා. එතකොට කොළඹින් පිට දැන් අපි සතියට දවස් 2ක් හෝ 3ක් ඇඳිරි නීති ඉවත් කරලා ඒගොල්ලන්ට බඩු ගන්න පුළුවන් තැනට මේකපත් කරා. හැබැයි මූලිකම අර්බුදය ආවේ මාර්තු මාසයේ වැටුප් ගෙව්වා. අප්‍රේල් මාසයේ වැටුප් ගෙවන එක ලොකු අර්බුදයක් බවට පත් වෙමින් තියෙනවා. සහ දැනටමත් පත් වෙලා තියෙනවා. අප්‍රේල් මාසයේ පෞද්ගලික ආයතන බොහොමයක් පෞද්ගලික ආයතන කොහොමද වැටුප් ගෙවන්නේ කියලා. ඊළඟ කාරණේ තමයි ලංකාවේ ලක්ෂ 53ක් පවුල් ඉන්නවා. එතනින් ලක්ෂ 50කට ආසන්න පිරිසක්. ඒ කියන්නේ 5 මිලියන් විතර එදිනෙදා කාරණා මත යැපෙන අය. එතකොට ඒ සියලුම දෙනාට රුපියල් 5000ක දීමනාවක් ලබා දීමට රජය තීරණය කරා. සමෘද්ධිය ලැබෙන අයට තමයි මුලින් මේක ලැබුණේ. නමුත් එතනත් සුවිශේෂී කාරණා දෙක තුනක් වුණා. එකක් තමයි දැන් අපේ තියෙන ලොකුම නෙට්වර්ක් එක සමෘද්ධි නෙට්වර්ක් එක. සමෘද්ධි නෙට්වර්ක් එකට රුපියල් 5000 දෙද්දි තමයි තේරෙන්න පටන් ගත්තේ. දැන් මේක මීට කලින් සිද්ධ වෙලා නැති දෙයක්. ඒ නිසා මේක රජය සහ රාජ්‍ය නිලධාරීන් අතර රජය කියලා කියපුවම ගොඩක්ම මේක අපි බලන්න ඕන රාජ්‍ය නිලධාරීන් තමයි මේ වෙලාවේ ලොකු බලයක් දීලා තියෙන්නේ මේ වැඩ කටයුතු සම්බන්ධීකරණය කරන්න සහ මෙහෙවන්න. රුපියල් 5000 බෙදාගෙන යද්දි තේරෙනවා සමෘද්ධි ලැබෙන අයට විතරක් රුපියල් 5000 දීලා මදි කියලා. ඒතකොට සමෘද්ධි පොරොත්තු ලේඛනය ඉන්න අයටත් දෙන්න පටන් ගන්නවා. ඊළඟට මේ විදියට මේ ලිස්ට් එකට 16 දෙනෙක් විතර එකතු වෙනවා අලුතෙන් කණ්ඩායම්. අන්තිමම ලිස්ට් එක අපි දැක්කම අන්තිම ලිස්ට් එකට කලින් ලිස්ට් එක 3 wheel එලවන අයට, කොණ්ඩේ කපන අයට, බාසුන් නැහැලට මේ සියලුම දෙනා මේ ලිස්ට් එකට එකතු කරා අන්තිමේදී. එතකොට 5.3 මිලියන් විතර ආවා මේ මුළු ලිස්ට් එක. එතකොට අන්තිමටම ආපු ප්‍රශ්නේ තමයි මේ ප්‍රශ්නේ ඇත්තටම ගොඩක් ඒ ප්‍රශ්නෙන්ද හේතුව මෙන්න මේක. මේ තමයි රජයේ තීරණයක් ගත්තා මේ සහනාධාර බෙදා යාමේ වැඩපිළිවෙල වඩාත් ප්‍රජාතන්ත්‍රීකරණය කරන්නේ කොහොමද කියලා. ඒ වෙලේ ගත්ත තීරණයක් තමයි ගමේ බඩු දෙන එක ගමේ කමිටුවකට බාර දෙන්න. ගමේ සහන සැලසීමේ වැඩපිළිවෙල ගමේ කමිටුවකට බාර දෙන්න. ඒකට කමිටුවේ ඉන්නේ ග්‍රාම නිලධාරීතුමා, සමෘද්ධි නියාමකතුමා, ඊළඟට ග්‍රාමීය සංවර්ධන නිලධාරියා. ඒතකොට එතන 3 දෙනෙක් ඉන්නවා. ඊළඟට ඒ ගමේ ඉන්න ජනතා නියෝජිතයෝ ඡන්ද බලයෙන් තේරුණ අය. උදාහරණයක් විදියට කොළඹ මගේ මැතිවරණ කොට්ටාශය මම ගත්තොත් එහෙම එතන ජනතා නියෝජිතයෝ 3 දෙනෙක් ඉන්නවා. මම ඉන්නවා පොහොට්ටුව නියෝජනය කරමින්, එක්සත් ජාතික පක්ෂ නියෝජනය කරමින් මන්ත්‍රීතුමියක් ඉන්නවා. තව මන්ත්‍රීතුමෙක් ඉන්නවා මනෝ ගණේෂන් මහත්තයාගේ පක්ෂ නියෝජනය කරමින් දෙමළ මන්ත්‍රීවරයෙක්. එතකොට අපි 3 දෙනාම පක්ෂ ભેදයක් නැතුව ඒ කමිටුවට දිගටම වාඩි වුණා. වාඩි වෙලා මුළු ගමේම ලිස්ට් එක ගත්තාම අපිට තේරුණා අපි මේ තියෙන ක්‍රයිටීරියා එක මේ විදියට හැදුවට මේ කිසිම ක්‍රයිටීරියා එකකට අහු වෙන්නේ නැති පිරිසකුත් ඉන්නව උදව් ගන්න ඕනේ. දැන් අපි බලපුවා මේ සමහර ගෙවල් වල වාහනයකුත් තියෙනවා. ගේ තට්ටු දෙකටත් හදලා. හැබැයි ඒගොල්ලන්ටත් උදව් ඕනේ. මොකද මේ වෙලාවේ ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ ජීවනෝපාය සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම නැති වෙලා තියෙනවා. එතකොට අලුත් සර්කියුලර් එකක් අපි ආණ්ඩුවෙන් අගමැතිතුමාගෙන් ඉල්ලීමක් කරා ඉෂුව කරන්න කියලා මේ කමිටුවට බලය දෙන්න කියලා ගමේ කාටද ආධාර ලැබිය යුත්තේ කමිටුව තීරණය කරන අයට ප්‍රාදේශීය ලේකම්තුමිය ආධාර ලබා දෙන්න වැඩ කටයුතු යොදන්න කියලා. ඒ අනුව අපේ අන්තිම සර්කියුලර් එක රජයෙන් නිකුත් වුණු සර්කියුලර් එකේ තියෙනවා එක ගෙදරක පවුල් දෙකක් ඉන්නවනේ උදාහරණයක් විදිහට කියන්නේ අම්මයි තාත්තයි නංගි ඉන්නවා අක්කා මැරි කරලා ඉන්නවා. එතකොට එතන පවුල් දෙකක්. එතකොට අක්කටත් රුපියල් 5000 හම්බ වෙනවා අම්මයි තාත්තයි පවුලටත් රුපියල් 5000 හම්බ වෙනවා. මේ විදිහට මේ වැඩපිළිවෙල එදිනෙදා ඉගෙන ගනිමින් තමයි මේ ආධාර ලබා දීමේ වැඩපිළිවෙලත් අරගෙන ගිහින් ළඟට මම හිතන්නේ ලොකුම අභියෝගයකට මුහුණ දුන්නේ අපිට ආහාර ලැබෙමින් තිබුණාට මේක අලුත් අවුරුදු සීසන් එක දැන් මේ අලුත් අවුරුදු සීසන් එක ඉවර වෙද්දිම පටන් ගන්නවා වෙඩින් සීසන් එක කියලා ලංකාවේ මේ සෝෂල් දේවල් මේ දෙකට තමයි ලංකාවේ මේ මාස තුන තමයි වැඩිම එළවලු පළතුරු සහ මල් ඉල්ලුමක් තියෙන්නේ. එතකොට මේ එළවලු සහ පළතුරු ඉල්ලුම 3 ගුණයක් විතර ලොකු වෙනවා. දැන් එතකොට ඒ එළවලු පළතුරු හදලා තියෙන්නේ. එතකොට ඒවට අපි මොකද කරන්නේ? එච්චර ලොකු කන්සම්ප්ෂන් එකක් රටට අවශ්‍ය නැහැ මේ වෙලාවේ. ඒ නිසා රජය මැදිහත් වුණා මිලදී අරගෙන බෙදා හරින්න. දැන් උදාහරණයක් විදිහට අපේ කමිටුවෙන් තීරණය කරනවා අපිට පැල්වා කරනවා එළවලු කිලෝ 2000ක් කියලා. ඒ අනුව කොළඹ දිස්ත්‍රික්කයට එළවලු කිලෝ 90000ක් අවශ්‍ය වෙනවා. එතකොට අපේ දිසාපතිවරයා එසෙන්ෂල් කමිටි එකට කියනවා දිසාපතිවරයා කොළඹ දිස්ත්‍රික්කයට හෙට එළවලු කිලෝ 90000ක් ඕනේ කියලා. එතකොට ඒ සේරම එකතු කරලා ඊළඟ දවසේ ආණ්ඩුව මිලදී ගන්නවා. ඒ මිලදී ගන්න ප්‍රමාණය නැවත වරක් බෙදා දෙනවා ආපහු අපේ දිස්ත්‍රික්ක වලට. උදාහරණයක් විදිහට අපි අප්‍රේල් 12 වෙනිදා මම උදාහරණයක් විදිහට ගත්තොත් අප්‍රේල් 12 වෙනිදා ඉල්ලුම තිබුණා මුළු ලංකාවම එළවලු කිලෝ මිලියන 1.4ක් විතර. එතකොට මොකද අලුත් අවුරුදු වෙන හින්දා 13යි 14යි 12 වෙනිදා ආණ්ඩුව එළවලු කිලෝ 9,90,000ක් almost 1 million සල්ලි දීලා ගත්ත ලංකාව පුරාම. අරගෙන 13 වෙනිදා වෙද්දී එළවලු කිලෝ ලක්ෂ 9කට ආසන්න ප්‍රමාණයක් බෙදා හැරියා. දැන් මේ ඉලක්කම් දත්ත සේරම available වෙලා තියෙනවා. දැන් තව මම මේ විදිහට උදාහරණයක් ගත්තොත් මම අරගෙන කියපු ડોකියුමන්ට් එකක් ලංකාවේ බෙහෙත් බෙදෙන එක. දැන් මේ ෆාමසි ඇරලා තිබ්බට අපේ ගම්වල ගොඩක් අම්මලා තාත්තලා බෙහෙත් ගන්න ආණ්ඩුවේ ක්ලිනික් එකෙන්. එතකොට ආණ්ඩුවේ ක්ලිනික් එක මේ වෙලාවේ වහලා තියෙන්නේ. තැපැල් දෙපාර්තමේන්තුව මම 12 වෙනිදා ලිස්ට් එක අරන් බලද්දී ඒ විදිහට ක්ලිනික් වලින් බෙහෙත් ගන්න අම්මලා තාත්තලා ලක්ෂ 4කට ආසන්න ප්‍රමාණයකට අතින් තැපැල් මහත්තයා ගිහිල්ලා පියන් ගිහිල්ලා බෙහෙත් ඩිලිවර් කරලා තිබුණා. එතකොට දැන් මේ මුළු වැඩපිළිවෙලම අධියරෙන් අධියර ඉගෙන ගනිමින් තමයි කරගෙන යන්නේ. මොකද ආණ්ඩුව මීට කලින් මේ වගේ අර්බුදයකට මුහුණ දීලා නැහැ. ආණ්ඩුව කෙසේ වෙතත් මම මෙතනදී ආණ්ඩුව කියලා ගන්න දේශපාලන යන්ත්‍රය. මෙතනදී වැඩි අවධානයක් යොමු කරන්න ඕන රාජ්‍ය නිලධාරී තන්ත්‍රයට. අමාත්‍යාංශ ලේකම්වරු, දිසාපතිවරු, ප්‍රාදේශීය ලේකම්වරු ඊළඟට ග්‍රාම නිලධාරීන් දක්වා මේ රාජ්‍ය ව්‍යුහය. මොකද ඒගොල්ලෝ තමයි මේ වැඩේ කරගෙන යන්නේ. එයාලා තමයි දැන් උදාහරණයක් විදිහට අපි ගත්තොත් එළවලු මිලදී ගැනීමේ මේ වෙලාවේ මුදල් දීලා තියෙන්නේ ආණ්ඩුකාරවරයා හරහා දිසාපතිවරයාට. අපි දැන් මේ අද ගත්තොත් එහෙම ප්‍රියංග ගාල්ලේ මාතර මාළු සල්ලි දීලා ගන්නේ එහෙ ඉන්න දිසාපතිවරයා. දිසාපතිවරයාට තමයි මූල්‍ය බලය දීලා තියෙන්නේ. දිසාපතිවරයා ඒ සල්ලි දෙනවා ප්‍රාදේශීය ලේකම්වරුන්ට. එතකොට ඒ විදිහට තමයි මේ යාන්ත්‍රණය දැනට හැදිලා තියෙන්නේ. දැන් මෙතන ප්‍රශ්න දෙකක්.
Sorry to interrupt, but I think the 5-minute plus period is up. Can I ask you to save some of your other points for the next round?
Yes.
What am I
will highlight some of the other issues during the next 3 minutes.
Thank you. What I might do is just do a quick summary, and obviously I can't pick all of the points that you made. I think you want to emphasize that as a young person in the political space, you want to clarify some things about what was being done to respond, and also to come to some shortcomings that might be improved, and that this pandemic requires some out-of-the-box thinking. And you identified from the time the first patient was identified, how schools were closed, a period of curfew was imposed, and the big issues of the time were around food, health, money. And you also drew distinctions between Colombo and outside of Colombo and how the different systems had to work. And then as we moved into April, this identification of 5.3 million individuals, families, and how the rupees 5,000 allocation needed to be distributed, beginning with the Samurdhi network, but then to add to that network as well. You also identified this village committee mechanism, a responsibility involving various officials who operate at the village level, like Grama Sevake, Samruddhi, and so on. And then also how there's a cross-party political network of sorts from government, opposition, and others who also might be connected with this. And then you made some points about how even households, two-story households which might have cars, might be in some difficulty already. I think you were frank in saying the New Year period and the holiday period for many of our people of faith have presented challenges, and then discuss how the fruit and vegetable distribution method, the problems with that. And I think you highlighted, look, this is an evolving set of issues. We have to learn as we do this. There's some responsibility on a range of state officials at whatever level they are. And they are learning too in terms of responding to something like this. I might leave that there unless anyone feels that I've missed something really critical in that summary. But and then
that's a good summary, Priyanka. And the very last thing, as a young person who has been involved in the process for last 4-5 weeks, I have also seen so many shortcomings. I have seen so many challenges. I have seen so many things which we would have done much better way. I don't think this is the best. We haven't given the best solutions probably, but in given circumstances, I think the government officials have tried their best to do in using given resources, given facilities, and given data and other and given stakeholder facilities.
Thank you, Melinda. Thank you very much for that. Rasika, may I invite you to make your opening remarks, please?
Yeah, thank you, Priyanka. I think it's common knowledge that low-income segments and poor people have been disproportionately affected by COVID-19 all over the world. So it's the case in Sri Lanka as well. So the fight against corona has also become a fight against inequality and injustice. That's how we identify this problem. But I will also try to look at some structural issues associated with this. Mainly, right now we don't know where we actually stand in terms of the economic fallout of COVID-19. For instance, when there was a global financial crisis in 2008, we lost about 90,000 jobs in the apparel sector. But this time, the crisis is far greater than that. But we don't know how many jobs we have lost so far, how many people have lost employment, how many people have lost their income. We don't have a mechanism to assess that right now. For instance, we know in the US, people file for unemployment. The last time I checked, I think over 16 million have filed for unemployment in the US. But here, it's really difficult to assess the economic impact. But I think now we fairly understand on the surface how things are going to be in the next 6 to 12 months. There will be serious economic challenges, and the hardest hit segment would be low-income earners and daily wage workers. We have various accounts to understand their plights, and I think a lot of people spoke about them, and I think other speakers will also focus on those areas. But I think I want to draw attention to a WhatsApp message that I received last evening. It was circulated in the Colombo circles. It actually cautioned us against allowing domestic helpers and drivers, disallow them to return to work once the curfew is lifted, because COVID-19 is spreading rapidly within those circles, in slum areas, in low-income areas, in Colombo. So it didn't have any basis. I mean, I checked with several doctors. They said there's nothing like that. Everyone is equally vulnerable, and no one is. It's not a poor man's disease. But but in Colombo, I think we have already started, creating that dichotomy, that division, that separation. So it shows how we are approaching this problem, and how that will generate inequality, and it will prevent us from adopting effective solutions if we go down that path. But I will specifically focus on two large segments that will be affected by this. One is farmers. Now, on social media and all that, we see a lot of hype about home gardening and encourage more farming, cultivations, and all sorts of things, making the country self-sufficient with agricultural products and all that, which is really good, and we all support those measures. But there are certain structural issues that need to be addressed. Otherwise, I mean, in the absence of those measures, this hype and this heightened enthusiasm about farming will exacerbate their current plight, will plunge them into further poverty. One key element is that 1/5 of lands in Sri Lanka are owned by private owners. So private ownership amounts to 20% in Sri Lanka when it comes to lands. So 80% of our lands are owned by the government. There are many farmers who cultivate in state-owned lands. They don't have ownership. They don't have deeds. Because of that, they can't do any development there. There are no investors. People are not willing to invest in those lands. So even if everyone in this country resorts to home gardening or cultivation, we can only fill up to 20% of our lands. So that's the reality. And also there's no proper guidance, there's no advisory procedure, there's no technical support, there's no adequate technical support for farmers. So with all these issues, if they cultivate blindly without any support system, that will create a surplus of agricultural products in the market. We are already experiencing that with pumpkin. Now there's a surplus of pumpkin in Sri Lanka right now. People make various foods ranging from ice cream to jalapa with pumpkin. But and because of that, I mean, the bottom line is that this indicates the gravity of the issue, and you can understand the plight of the people who grow pumpkin, who cultivate pumpkin. So if we go down this path, if we promote agriculture without a proper plan and technical support to assist them, we will exacerbate the plight of the farmers. We will create further inequality. That is a serious issue that we need to look at, because 27.7% of our workforce are in the agricultural sector. That means 1/5, more than 1/4 of our entire working population. So that is why it's very critical to adopt a strategic approach when devising these plans. We can't have knee-jerk reactions. We can't have ad hoc measures, because we are heading into a food crisis. We can't encourage people to cultivate blindly without a plan, because that will create further issues. One other large area is school-going children in rural areas. Now, we see on social media, there's a lot of hype, a lot of chatter, a lot of enthusiasm about online learning and distant education. There are education programs on TV. There are so many education programs online, and we encourage students to take part in them. And although they're at home right now, although the schools are closed, we ask students to engage with that process. But the issue is, in Sri Lanka, the internet penetration stands at 47%. In the large majority of our villages, digital literacy is below 40%. In the estate areas, it's much lower than that. So the majority of our population is technically illiterate when it comes to digitalization and digital devices. So this alienates a large number of students, school-going children in the rural areas from pursuing the education due to the current lockdown. I'm not saying these digital education programs, online education, and distant learning is bad. What I'm trying to say is that these measures need to be inclusive, and we need to come up with support systems. For instance, when we were in the government, during the previous government, the education minister pursued a program to give laptops to students in the A-level classes. Tabs, not laptops, tabs. And then we also embarked on a smart classroom program. But those programs were interrupted by people with vested interest. There were a lot of political campaigning against those programs. Some people actually said tablets caused cancer, and because of that, those programs we couldn't pursue those plans. So right now we are paying the price. Right now we are already experiencing the results of those measures. I think going forward, right now we can't have an immediate solution to this because we are in the midst of a serious crisis, and there's going to be a serious financial crisis going forward. But once we come out of this, we need to adopt comprehensive, inclusive solutions to improve digital literacy in Sri Lanka, and make sure that these online education measures and all that, they're actually practical and inclusive. So that's why, I mean, I didn't look into issues like gender-based violence and all that, because other people will talk about these things, issues faced by minorities and all that. So I just focused on two large segments that are affected by the current situation.
Thank you very much, Rasika. Brian, may I ask you to make your opening remarks, please?
Sure, thank you once again, Priyanka. So I'd like to start off by saying that I'd like to frame my insight, firstly, as someone who's been a part of a fairly large collective effort in getting across essential food packs to daily wage workers and low-income families in Colombo, and secondly, through a gendered perspective. So let me begin with where my ear has been to the ground, which is in Colombo. And as far as I see it, it's a place where that disparity in privilege is painfully visible. Now, despite the narrative of the government and certain media institutions, the reality is people are suffering. People are falling through the cracks. And to not acknowledge this and to gloss over it by saying that things are being taken care of is a great injustice. Granted that this is a global pandemic and this is not something that any country has had the capacity to deal with, but it's this very structure that has failed us that we need to then question. So I have a few points that I'd like to talk about, a few groups of people who are falling through the cracks, and I want to be able to acknowledge them all. So today there are people who are falling through the cracks because of paperwork, because of how we've defined and labeled their residence, because of, I mean, just as an example, there are many migrant workers from around the island who reside in Colombo and of course in other larger cities who aren't registered with their Gram Sevakas. And now, as a result of this, despite everything that is being painted as, you know, a great process, they now don't have any access to basics. Also, there are people in underserved areas who don't have any access to essentials, for whom politicization means the difference between access to food and not. And I talk a lot about food because it is a lot about hunger. It's a lot about people's anxiety around food and hunger. Another group of people is to those who come from already vulnerable communities who are now more marginalized than before. So this includes thousands of people who don't fulfill the gender social norm and requirements of being a good citizen, and therefore have little access to basics and aid. And this is basically the homeless. We have sex workers and many people in the LGBT community who don't quite, who don't quite make the cut. I'd also like to acknowledge the women who we've built our economies on, those in the free trade zones. Our garment workers, there's an estimated amount of 15,000 garment workers who are still stranded in their boardings with no way to get back to their homes, no salaries, no food. Now, a portion of them worked throughout the whole of last year in a full-time capacity to not receive their bonuses in April, right? So they've worked the whole year through. They've not even received their salaries, forget bonuses. Another portion of them are what we call manpower workers or daily wage workers, and they've had no access to absolute basics for over a month, including food and sanitary products. Most of them are women. There was a report published yesterday which also talked about how they have no way to even, put in a phone card to contact their families back at home. And I'd also like to acknowledge something a little different to the other groups that I've spoken of so far, which is to also acknowledge the many women who are being abused and beaten in their own homes, even though we are being told home is where it's safe during the time of crisis. And if you take a phone call, that's what you hear, right? Stay home. But to add to make things worse, the government also allowed the opening of liquor stores, and we also saw stories that came after. So sadly, this list, even in a single sentence point form, could go on for the entire duration of this discussion, and that is the enormity of this issue, of the number of people who are falling through the cracks, for whom inequality is a systematic issue that stems from the lack of infrastructure and support. So I'd like to now also, in my few minutes remaining, also offer some solutions. And my first solution is that we need to strengthen networks that already exist, especially with communities. There's little point in engaging every sector without engaging with the people. And this will also help move away from this power dynamic that keeps widening. The government and the state has to acknowledge that they can't manage this alone. And it is in mobilizing communities and partnering with them, that solutions can be found, not just with COVID, but with every crisis. As a second solution, I also like to talk about perhaps a focus on a more collective impact approach. So this also includes bringing in all stakeholders, which include non-governmental organizations, the private sector, civil society, and of course, once again, that the community, so that we're all pooling in our resources together. And this is something that I can say that we actually attempted to do with the work that we did, and engaging with all the sectors in trying to work, and not just working in our own silos and saying this is what we are doing, and creating just our space for ourselves. Thirdly, I'd also like to talk about being proactive rather than reactive. This is, I think, a few of the other speakers also touched on. But that starts now. It's only if we do this now that we will spend more time and more resources in understanding, for instance, the impact of gender, the impact this crisis has on gender. So although we are ill-prepared now, perhaps we'll be better prepared the next time, not solely in terms of just goods and food items or essential services, but also understand the mechanisms and structures that support every single one of these people, and it will help them to not fall through the cracks time and time again. And lastly, I'd like to throw in a word that a lot of people don't discuss in these kinds of contexts, and that's empathy. Empathy by the state, empathy by the government, and empathy by the people. It's usually something, like I said, we don't talk about, but really a lot of the problems we have stem from a lack of empathy, and it is failing us. So I just want to be able to share that with you also.
Thank you, Vera. Is that your statement?
Yes.
Thank you. Great. Thanks very much. Now, I've looked through the chat box and there are no questions. So I'm happy to leave each of you some time to think of questions which you want to type in and identify who for. But so that we keep this moving, if it's okay with all of you, I'd like to offer each of you, from what you said, something to clarify and something to take further in each of what you have said. And I might do this in reverse this time, Bryce, so I'm going to start with you. Can you expand a little bit about how you would see these strengthened networks work? For example, you identified as your solutions the idea that government partners with civil society, private sector, community, etc. How would you see this working? Can you reflect on an example in your area where something like that might have worked and what it might have done?
Sure, I can. That's certainly something I can do. So I'd like to talk a little bit about a platform that we're a part of, which is called We Build Colombo Together, which I am also new to, but the platform existed for a while. And it's also in connecting these various stakeholders. So you have private sector organizations, you have the government. So just to also run you through how we also worked on this food distribution. Because the need was there, the need is still there, we're still getting requests, but instead of going and just handing over goods and essential items, we worked through the regional secretariats, we worked through the ground sevakers, and very importantly, we worked through a group of people who are registered under the Colombo Municipal Council. I'm sure Melinda may have heard of them. They're called the CBC, it's a Community Development Council. It's a very old network that started off in the 1980s, and these are very strong networks. But they're not really used because with the politicization of each of these kind of society, sometimes they get left out. So this is a network that exists. There are over 100 CDCs in Colombo. And we chose to work with those networks. So instead of us just going in as individuals, and as someone quite nicely put it, playing the Mother Teresa role and just going and handing over goods, we chose to work with the CDCs. And through the CDCs, they work with their own committees. These aren't politicians who come in from the outside and hand over goods and 400-500 packs and and then create that kind of that relationship is very different, because these are people from their own communities who are then sharing goods with their own communities. So I felt like that was a very different approach. And Hiromi already spoke about dignity. And I think even in how we distribute, what we distribute, instead of looking at those in underserved areas only as victims, and here's your badumalla, here's your pack of food, and kind of distancing yourself from that afterwards. But in trying to, as you're reaching out, as you're helping, in trying to help those networks strengthen themselves by giving them, it's like that story about the you give the man a fish, or you give him the fishing rod and teach him to fish. It's kind of close to that kind of story, where you look at development also in a different approach, and you look at giving back and helping, and also in a different approach. So I think these are possibilities. They're not impossible, but for that to happen, the state and the government has to acknowledge that they can't manage alone. And this facade of we are doing everything right, we're doing everything great, needs to stop. And that's how I see it.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Rasika, my next question to you. You identified two key areas or sectors, the farming sector, agriculture sector, and then the student and education sector. And given how significant they are in terms of workforce and the future, can I ask you, do we have, is there accessible gender statistics on the farmer and agricultural sector and the student sector? And the reason, and not just statistics, but the gendered impacts of this, so that the solutions can be more targeted once we understand who we mean by farmer and agriculture, who we mean by student and education, what impacts they have. Thank you.
I think you directed the question to the wrong person. I'm on the other side, and should be asked from Milinda, because he's in the government and he has access to these statistics, and the government is the entity that should come up with those solutions. I mean, what I've identified, what we have identified as a political force in the opposition is that we can't have knee-jerk reactions to these problems. So that's the core issue. For instance, in the recent past, we saw how our youth got together and painted walls. 2 weeks down the line, what we see is those baskets and paintbrushes lying on the side of the road, and painters are nowhere to be seen. So we can't get caught up in this social media hype and then exacerbate our current issues. So the same applies to the agricultural sector and the education sector also. Don't get caught up in the social media hype about distant learning, online education, home gardening, and cultivating more, being self-sufficient. Come up with comprehensive, inclusive solutions. Get the inputs from the opposition also. Get the inputs from civil society organizations and others working in those spaces. And then have a stable 5-year, 10-year strategic plan that will systematically resolve these issues. That's what we are pushing for.
Thank you, Rasika. And by way of a follow-up, just on this idea of gender-based statistics and information, if the information isn't there, I take your point that it's usually within the state that information and data be held. Is your position that it is important that this data be captured so that the solutions can be targeted? I suppose is the question.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Iro, over to you. Now I've seen some questions on the. Sorry, it's actually Milinda. There is a question online, but to be fair, I'm going to go through a round of questions with all of you, and then let's take up in that last round any specific questions that is available. Melinda, I'd like you to reflect on, again, this idea from a gender perspective, which is you've identified some of the challenges and how those solutions were met in terms of distribution, in terms of food being distributed, in terms of you identified the household where there were different families. But do you have a sense that attention is being paid to the gendered impacts of this? Like looking at the household, not just from male-run households, but say female-run households, looking at where food is going, who is bringing food, what the food needs are, who the the day workers are, and so on. Do you want to just comment broadly on that? I realize it's a big question, but I'm keen to hear how you would see that. Thank you.
Thanks, Priyanka. Data has been captured more than ever during this crisis. අපේ ග්‍රාම නිලධාරීන්ගේ වරුන්ගේ ඉඳන් සංවර්ධන නිලධාරීන් දක්වා සියලුම දෙනාටගෙන් කරන එක වැදගත් කාරණයක් තමයි මේ වෙලාවේ දත්ත එකතු කරගන්න එක. සෑම තලයකම තියෙන දත්ත. ඇත්තටම අපි ඉතිහාසයේ කවදාවත් නොතිබුණු නොලැබුණු ප්‍රමාණයේ දත්ත ප්‍රමාණයක් මේ වෙලාවේ එකතු වෙලා තිබෙනවා. මිනිසුන්ගේ behavior එක ගැන අපිට නොපෙනෙනු ග්‍රාමීය මට්ටමේ තිබෙන අවශ්‍යතාවයන් ගැන ඒ වගේම අපිට නොපෙනෙනු පවුල් වල තිබෙන ඒ කියන්නේ මේ කුටුම්බය ඇතුලේ household එක ඇතුලේ මේ වගේ economic disparity එකක් ආපම මේ වගේ ප්‍රශ්නයක් ආපම තියෙන ප්‍රශ්න ඒ වගේම අපි හැමෝම හිතාගෙන හිටියේ පෞද්ගලික අංශය අපි හිතාගෙන හිටියේ මේ වගේ crisis එකකදී ඉතා හොඳින් උත්තර දෙයි ඉතා හොඳින් ඒකට හැඩ ගැහෙයි කියලා අපි පහුගිය මාසෙ තුල එකතුණු කරුණු දත්ත දිහා බලපුවාම ඒකත් එහෙම නෑ කියලා තේරුණා. උදාහරණයක් විදිහට ලංකාවේ කිසිම සුපර් මාකට් චේන් එකකට බැරි වුණා. පළවෙනි සති දෙක විතර යනකම් බඩු ඩෙලිවර් කරන යාන්ත්‍රණය හදාගන්න. ඒක ටිකක් කල් ගිහලා තමයි ඒකට ඇඩ්ජස්ට් උනේ, ඒකට ඇඩැප්ට් උනේ. එතකොට අනිත් පැත්තෙන් බලපුවාම මේ ඇත්තටම මේ ප්‍රශ්නේ අනිත් කොටස මේ ජෙන්ඩර් ඉෂුව එක මම ඒකට එක නිදර්ශනයක් එක එක්සැම්පල් එකක් දෙන්නම් මම දැකපු ඇත්තටම මේ ගොඩක් අපේ සමෘද්ධිය ලැබෙන පවුල් ගත්තත් ගොඩක් පවුල් තිබෙනවා වැන්දබුවන් ජීවත් වෙන විඩෝස්ලා ජීවත් වෙන පවුල්. එතකොට පවුලේ ප්‍රධානියා ලෙස ඉන්නේ අම්මා කෙනෙක්. තමා ප්‍රධානියා ලෙස ඉන්නේ මේ සමෘද්ධි ලැබෙන ගොඩක් පවුල් වලත් ඒ තත්ත්වය තියෙනවා. හැබැයි එතනින් එහාට ගිහිල්ලා මේ අපි කොටස් වශයෙන් උදව් කරගෙන එද්දි තේරුණු එක ප්‍රශ්නයක් තමයි ගොඩක් වයසට ගියාම ඒ කියන්නේ දරුවන්ව කසාද බන්දලා දීලා ගියාම ගොඩක් පවුල් වල ලංකාවේ ඉතුරු වෙලා ඉන්නේ කිරි අම්මලා වයසක ගියාම ආච්චිලා තමයි ඉතුරු වෙලා ඉන්නේ මොකද ගොඩක් සැමියන් වයස අවුරුදු 60 දී 65 දී 70 දී මැරිලා යනවා හැබැයි අම්මා අවුරුදු 75 80 85 වෙනකන් කිරි අම්මා ජීවත් වෙනවා හැබැයි අපේ මේ ගණනය කිරීම වලදී ඒගොල්ලන්ව කුටුම්බයක් විදිහට අපි ගණන් ගන්න නැහැ. මොකද අපි හැම වෙලේම කුටුම්බයේ විදිහට ඒතර ගෙදර ගණන් ගන්නේ. ගෙදර ඉන්න කසාද බැඳලා ඉන්න දරුවෝ. ඒතකොට අරය හැම වෙලේම යැපෙන්නෙක් විදිහට තමයි අපි ගණන් හැදුවේ. ෆස්ට් ටයිම් මේ වෙලාවේ තමයි අපේ සෝෂල් සිකියුරිටි සිස්ටම් එක ඒගොල්ලොන්වත් පවුලක් විදිහට ගණන් හැදුවා. ඒතකොට ඒ අම්මත් තනි කාණ්ඩයක් විදිහට අපි ගණන් හදලා එයාටත් ආධාර ලැබෙන විදිහට හෝ රුපියල් 5000 යන විදිහට වැඩපිළිවෙලක් මුල් වතාවට රාජ්‍ය නිලධාරීන් තීරණය කරා. රජයේ තීරණය කරා. ඒක මම දැකපු එක සුවිශේෂී අවස්ථාවක් අපි මේක තේරුම් ගත්ත මේ ප්‍රශ්නය. ඊළඟට අපේ හෙල්ත් වර්ක් ෆෝස් එක ගත්තොත් හෙල්ත් වර්ක් ෆෝස් එකේ වැඩිපුරම ඉන්නේ කාන්තාවන්. ඒකට හේතුව තමයි ගොඩක් නර්සස්ලා බහුතරයක් මේ ෆ්‍රන්ට් ලයින් එකේ ඉන්න අය කාන්තාවන්. එතකොට ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ අවශ්‍යතාවයන් මොනවද කියන එක සම්බන්ධයෙන් ජනාධිපති කාර්යාලය දිගටම සාකච්ඡා කරා. මොකද ඒගොල්ලෝ ගොඩක් අය දරුවන්ව ගෙදර තියලා එන්නේ ගොඩක් අය දරුවෝ මේ දවස්වල ඉස්කෝලේ යන්න නැතුව ගෙදර ඉන්න නිසා ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ අවශ්‍යතාවයන් බලන්න ඕන ඊළඟට මුළු පවුලම ගෙදර ඉන්නේ සාම්ප්‍රදායික වශයෙන් අපේ ගෙදර වැඩ කටයුතු බලාගෙන ඉන්නෙත් අම්මා එහෙම නැත්නම් බිරිඳ ගෙදර කාන්තාව දැන් මේගොල්ලෝ සේරම ෆ්‍රන්ට් ලයින් එකේ වර්ක් ෆෝස් එක බවට පත් වෙලා තියෙනවා මේ ඊළඟට අපි ගත්තොත් ග්‍රාම නිලධාරීන් සහ සංවර්ධන නිලධාරීන් සමෘද්ධි නිලධාරීන් 150කට වඩා 160-70කට කිට්ටු වෙන්නේ ආයෙත් කාන්තාවන්. අපි දැන් මගේ ඡන්ද බල ප්‍රදේශ ගත්තාම මගේ කමිටු ගොඩක මම වාඩි වුණාම මගේ රාජ්‍ය නිලධාරීන් කාන්තාවන්. මගේ තිමිරිගස්සේ අය ප්‍රාදේශීය ලේකම්තුමිය කාන්තාවක්. මේ ෆ්‍රන්ට් ලයින් එකේ ඉන්න ගොඩක් අය කාන්තාවෝ. එතකොට ඒගොල්ලෝ ඉතාම එෆිෂියන්ට් විදිහට ඉෆෙක්ටිව් විදිහට ඒගොල්ලෝ ප්‍රශ්න දිහා බලන විදිහත් මට දැන් ඇත්තටම ප්‍රාදේශීය ලේකම්තුමිය කාන්තාවක් වුණාම ග්‍රාම නිලධාරිනිය කාන්තාවක් වුණාම සමුද්‍ර නිලධාරිනිය කාන්තාවක් වුණාම එයා මේ ප්‍රශ්න දිහා බලන විදිහත් වෙනස්. මම මේ කියන්නේ පොතෙන් කියවලා නෙමෙයි මම පහුගිය සති පහේ මේ කමිටු වල බඩු විදන තැන් වල වාඩි වෙලා මම දැක්ක දේ. ඒගොල්ලන්ට ගෙදර ප්‍රශ්නේ, පවුලේ ප්‍රශ්නේ, ළමයිගේ ප්‍රශ්නේ ඒගොල්ලන්ට තේරෙන විදිය වෙනස්. ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ hands on experience එක වෙනස්. ඒ හින්දා ඒගොල්ලෝ ඊටාම මානුෂීය සහ සංවේදී විදියට මේ ප්‍රශ්න දිහා බලනවා. සහ ඒගොල්ලෝ උඩට බලපෑම් කරනවා. බලපෑම් කිරීම නිසා තමයි පහුගිය සති පහේ අපිට ගොඩාක් චක්‍රලේඛ නැවත වෙනස් කරන්න උනේ. ගොඩාක් ඩොකියුමන්ට්ස් නැවත වෙනස් කරන්න උනේ. එක අවස්ථාවක ජනාධිපති කාර්ය සාධක බලකායේදී ජනාධිපතිතුමා කිව්වා පරණ චක්‍රලේඛන ඩොකියුමන්ට්ස් ලිපි ලේඛන මීට කලින් අවුරුදුර වැඩ කරපු විදිහවල් අරගෙන එන්න එපා. කරුණාකරලා ගම්මට්ටමේ ඉන්න නිලධාරීන් සහ නිලධාරිනියන් කියන විදිහට අලුත් චක්‍රලේඛන හදන්න ඕන නම් අලුත් ඩොකියුමන්ට්ස් හදන්න ඕන නම් අපි හදමු කියලා. මොකද ඒගොල්ලෝ තමයි දන්නේ මොකක්ද ඇත්තටම වෙන්නේ කියලා. ඊළඟට දැන් සෞඛ්‍ය ඇමතිතුමියක් ලංකාවේ ඉන්නේ. මම කියන්නේ මුළු අපේ ඉන්න ෆ්‍රන්ට් ලයින් එකේම පිරිමි 10ක් මැද්දේ එක සෞඛ්‍ය ඇමතිතුමියක් ඉන්නේ, එක කාන්තාවක් ඉන්නේ. ඒකෙන් මේ මුළු වැඩේම ජෙන්ඩර් බැලන්ස් එකක් හැදෙනවා කියලා. නමුත් ඇය දිගින් දිගටම දෙන මේ වැඩ කරන විදිය, ඇය දෙන ලීඩර්ෂිප් එකනුත් ලොකු කොන්ෆිඩන්ස් එකක් හැදිලා තියෙනවා. අපි ලංකාව වගේ රටක මේ වගේ ලොකු ක්‍රයිසිස් එක ලොකුම වගකීම තියෙන තැනක වුණත් කාන්තාවකට නායකත්වය දෙන්න පුළුවන් විදිහ ගැන ඒක හොඳ එක මම කියන්නේ ඒක කෙනෙකුට කියන්න පුළුවන්. ඒක නිකන් හුදෙක් පෙනුමට පවණක් අපිට මේ කෙනෙක් විතරක් කාන්තාවක් නායකාවක් විදියට හිටියා කියලා මේ ප්‍රශ්න විසඳෙනවා කියලා පේන්න බෑ කියලා. නමුත් ඒක හොඳ සිම්බල් එකක් අපි හැමෝම ගෙදරින් මේක දිහා බලාගෙන ඉන්න අයට.
Melinda, I might ask you to stop there for a second, just in the interest of time. If we have more time, we will come back. I'm going to attempt a quick summary again. So on this idea of gender and making sure we're not, that we are paying attention to this, you identified, historically and even now the Grama Sevakas, and from that low level, data has been collected and exists in some detail. You've identified examples of how often there are women-led families that are supported through Samruddhi. I'm not going to attempt a translation of Kiriammas, but I guess that's a segment of our society where I suppose slightly older women who sometimes overlook.
Grandmothers, grandparents, grandmothers.
Correct. But I didn't want to attempt a literal translation. Are often not counted, but they are now included. You've identified how the health force comprised of nurses. There were discussions with them about their needs, including whether it's looking after children at school and the children's needs, or the families at home. And also that some of the staff at the level of Grama Sevaka and Samruddhi, being women themselves, will have experiences that they can draw on, which have been helpful to this process. Iromi, I'm going to move on to you, if that is all right. I think I'd like to hear a little bit. I mean, you've identified a range of areas of where COVID-19 has exacerbated particular sectors, for example, and you've identified the fact that there's no food access or money access or housing access. And again, I'd like to follow up on a question on gender, firstly based on data, what data there is or there isn't, and where and who should we get this data from? And secondly, to reflect on how some of these issues exacerbate circumstances for women or young people, please. Thank you. Iromi, your mic's on is muted. You might want to unmute, please. Thank you.
Sorry. Priyanka, could you repeat the first bit of your question, please? It got cut off in the middle.
Sure. The first part of the question was around data, like is there sufficiently available, whether through institutions, authorities, data on the sectors and the gaps you identified, and if so, if not, how do we get the data, and to reflect on where the responsibility to collect that data is and how useful it would be. That's the first part of the question. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Priyanka. So basically, with regard to existing information and data, to be honest, there is extremely inadequate data, at least with the communities that we work with in Colombo, which is around 15,000 families relocated under the Urban Regeneration Project. The data does exist to some extent with the UDA, but this is not publicly available data. And this is a problem, and also data exists in various spaces. So for example, there'll be Samurdhi data, there'll be some information that's with the Gram Sevaka, some with the schools, some with the Women's Bank, some with the CDCs that Rai spoke about earlier. But it's also about how do we access all this different information in order to make sure that whatever efforts that we're doing are addressing all these different needs. And with the work that we've been doing, some of the key issues that women have been facing has mainly a lot to do with of course, it's issues around income and things like that, but they have also just, in this particular time that we've been seeing exacerbated, is around space. And again, this idea of that home is the best place to be. And the issue here is that for a lot of the women that we work with, home wasn't the best place to be even before COVID-19. And now it has become the space that they're forced to be in. And in a lot of the housing that they've been forced to live in, particularly the high rises, they are confined to this 400 square foot space that they found to be stifling and difficult and extremely insecure even before this crisis hit. But now it's even worse because they can't step out. This idea of home gardening is a joke because there's not even space to have a pot or any place that has direct sunlight in some of these apartments. So then what is this home gardening challenge even mean? In a lot of the high rises, women can't even go down. Children can't go down. Basically go down meaning go to the ground floor to play. They can't leave their apartments. There's police or there's military guarding these spaces. And these are the kind of luxuries that are afforded to other condominiums in Colombo, where people are able to go down to the pool, they're able to go down to their supermarkets, there are gatherings for residents, there's no policing of the space in higher end condominiums that you see in the policing of low income, working class, poor communities. And also for women, we've seen a lot of complaints in around domestic violence and intimate partner violence. But when you are confined to this space of 400 square feet, 2 rooms, where you're living with extended family, children, how do you expect them to call? These are just practical examples I'm giving. There are helplines, but how do you call if the only phone at home is your husband's? How do you call if you run out of credit on your phone and there's no way to top it up? And say you do make a call, what does that mean? Most women don't want their husbands to be arrested at this time because they don't want them to be in prison where there's overcrowding and they're scared that they'll get beaten up at the police, they'll catch COVID in a crowded jail cell, and then when they come back the issues are going to be exacerbated. And these are the practical everyday fears that we are seeing from the women. And with young people, it's also a lot of you can see mentally that this period of uncertainty, when can you go back to school, when can you go back to work, when will we have money again, and the inadequacy even from our end to address the mental health issues and even these very stressful questions that people have. Those are some of the issues that we're seeing.
Thank you, Romy. My next question is to Ambika. Ambika, you talked about the application of law and gave some examples of where you said the application could be better or it might be a case of misapplication. You identified an example of where there was popular media that might have exaggerated something. I'm just interested, over a 2 to 3 week period, we've seen a range of popular incidents, and I'm going to name them so we can be very specific. We've had different decision making around the burial or burial rights of a particular community. We have seen a medical union name a community as particularly high risk in terms of an identification factor or variable. We have seen a clip of a popular media show in discussion with some former elected representatives make remarks that were untoward towards a community. We've also had from the government guidance given about how community-based responses should be made and how these issues should be handled. So in that context, can I ask you to reflect on how and why this happens? Because those three examples are from three very established or learned institutions or systems, and yet it keeps happening, and all in the space of 2 or 3 weeks. And then any solutions you might have for that, please. Thank you.
I think it just goes back, your questions go back to my initial point, in the sense you very rightly said, in 2 to 3 weeks we have seen it, but that's not correct. We have seen this over weeks or months, and I think it comes back to us of us being in denial of the deep divisions that do exist within our society, the discrimination that exists, the marginalization that exists, the demonization of certain communities that exist. So for instance, it is the burial and even the union coming out with of GMOA, identifying or racial profiling Muslims is a form of also, I would say, inciting hatred. And that is something I think we have failed to address openly and honestly. That although we are a multi-ethnic, multi-religious country, that we do have these divisions, and we do need to deal with them. I mean, when we speak of reconciliation, it can't all be, holding hands and everything is fine. It is not. And it is not just about ethnic minorities or Tamils or Muslims, it's also about social groups. So for instance, LGBTIQ persons are also subject to a different form of hatred or violence, discrimination. So I think the reason that we have seen it come up to the surface so quickly is because it has always existed and we really haven't tackled it. It is as if we feel that if we do tackle it, we are showing a weakness as a country. But I would say the strength always is in introspection. It is being upfront about what our problems are, about speaking them about it honestly, and also not, what shall we say, that people are able to speak about it openly without reprisals, without fear. So I think that is why it feels like it's new Priyanka or something that has been happening over the past 2 or 3 weeks. But historically, we've had ethnic violence against minority groups. We have had, even against the Muslim community over the past several years, violence. Even last year, we saw it. And therefore, even the year before that, with Digana. So I think it is a pattern. It shows that we do have, fundamental inequalities, prejudices, discrimination within our society that we do need to tackle. And maybe this is an opportunity for us, because COVID, I feel, has thrown up all this in our faces to the point we really can't ignore it anymore.
Thank you, Ambika. So using the facilitator's prerogative, there's only one question on the chat box, and that's a question for Melinda. Could you please tell us how the Sri Lanka 820 million in the President's Fund will be spent? What is the process through which the sector's initiatives for support to be identified? Who will make the decisions? How will those persons be chosen? And how will information about the spending be shared with the public? And maybe that is probably a good question for us to end on as well, because it's looking at something that's critical to how some of these problems will be addressed, and then the solutions going forward. Over to you, Melinda.
Priyanka, COVID-19 මැඩලීමේ ජනාධිපති අරමුදල හැම දවසකම ප්‍රෙස් රිලීස් එකක් ඉෂුව කරනවා ඒ දවසේ සමරිය සම්බන්ධයෙන්. ඒක ජනාධිපති මාධ්‍යංශයේ වෙබ්සයිට් එකට ගියොත් ඕනෑම කෙනෙකුට හැමදාම බලන්න පුළුවන් ඒ දවසේ මුදල් වැඩිවීම මොන ආකාරයකද සිද්ධ වෙලා තියෙන්නේ කියලා. සමහර දවසක ප්‍රෙස් රිලීස් එක මිස් වෙලා තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. ගොඩක් ප්‍රෙස් රිලීස් සමහර දවසට අපි ප්‍රෙස් රිලීස් 4-5 රජයෙන් නිකුත් කරන දවස් තියෙනවා. එහෙම වුණොත් ඒක මගහැරෙන්න පුළුවන්. එහෙම නැත්නම් සාමාන්‍යයෙන් හැමදාකම වගේ සමරි එක මොකක්ද කියලා මේ ප්‍රෙස් රිලීස් එකේ තියෙනවා. ඊළඟට ටිකක් උඩට ගියොත් බලා ගන්න පුළුවන් මුල් දවස්වල ප්‍රෙස් රිලීස් කීපයක් නිකුත් කරා. මෙහි රෝල් එක මොකද්ද, මේ කුමක් අරඹයාද මේ ජනාධිපති අරමුදල නිර්මාණය කරේ සහ එහි පාර්ශවකරුවන් කවුද කියලා. ඒ කියන්නේ එතන හෙල්ත් DG ඉන්නවා, එතන පිළිගත් රටේ පිළිගත් පුද්ගලයන් නිලධාරීන් පිරිසක් තමයි එහි පාලක සභාව ලෙස පත් කරලා තියෙන්නේ. එතකොට ඒකට ලැබෙන මුදල්, ඒවා වියදම් වෙන ආකාරය, ඒවා කොහාටද යන්නේ කියන එක තීරණය කරන්නේ මේ පාලක සභාව. ඒ පාලක සභාවේ කිසිම දේශපාලඥයෙක් නැහැ. එතන ඉන්නේ විවිධ පාර්ශව නියෝජනය කරන රාජ්‍යංශයේ නිලධාරීන් තමයි එකේ ඉන්නේ. එයාලා තමයි තීරණය කරන්නේ මේ මුදල් මොන ආකාරයෙන් මොන වැඩ කටයුතු සඳහා බෙදී යා යුතුද කියලා. ඊළඟට මේකට ලැබෙන මුදල් 100% ට්‍රාන්ස්පේරන්ට්. හැම මුදල් පරිත්‍යාගයකම ඡායාරූපයක් පළ කරනවා ජනාධිපති මාධ්‍යංශය විසින් කවුරුද මුදල් ලබා දුන්නේ කියලා. උදාහරණයක් විදිහට එතෙන්ද ගෙන රුපියල් ලක්ෂ 2ක් ගෙනත් දුන්නාගේ ඡායාරූපත් පළ කරලා තියෙනවා. මිලියන 50ක් ආධාර දුන්නාගේ ඡායාරූපත් පළ කරලා තියෙනවා. එතකොට ඒ සියල්ල තමයි සාරාංශ විදිහට එදිනෙදා එළියට එන්නේ. එතකොට තාම ජනාධිපති අරමුදල ලැබුණු මුදල් වියදම් කරන්න පටන් අරන් නැහැ. ඒක සිද්ධ වෙන්නේ එතකොට රටේ ඊළඟට ඉදිරියට එන වැඩපිළිවෙලේ තත්ත්වයන් දිහා බලලා තමයි මේ මුදල් වියදම් කරන්නේ. නමුත් මතක තියාගන්න ඕනේ මේ මුදල සමාජ ආරක්ෂණ අරමුදලක්. ඒ කියන්නේ මේ මුදල් භාවිතා කළ හැක්කේම සමාජ ආරක්ෂණ කටයුතු සඳහා පමණයි. ඒ කියන්නේ social protection කටයුතු සඳහා පමණමයි සහ මට අවබෝධ වුණු ආකාරයට ඒකත් health related. ඒ කියන්නේ මේ එපිඩමික් එකට අදාළ දේවල් වලට පමණයි භාවිතා කළ හැකි. ඊට අදාළ ලෙස තමයි මේ නීති රීති සකස් කරලා තිබුණේ මේ ප්‍රකාශයටපත් කරද්දී. මේක 100% transparent විදියට තමයි මේ මොහොත වෙනකොටත් පවත්වාගෙන යන්නේ. ඕනෑම කෙනෙකුට ඒ සම්බන්ධයෙන් සහ මට ඒ සම්බන්ධ තියෙන ප්‍රෙස් රිලීස් ටික සේරම මංගාවක් තියෙනවා. කෙනෙකුට අවශ්‍ය නම් මට WhatsApp message එකක් දාන්න. මට මේ ප්‍රෙස් රිලීස් සේරම ටික එවන්න පුළුවන්. කොහොමද අරමුදල දවසින් දවස වැඩි වුණේ කියන එක පිළිබඳව ජනාධිපති මාධ්‍යංශය නිකුත් කරපුවා.
Thank you, Melinda. I'm going to attempt a quick translation. So in terms of the actual expenditure of this fund, it hasn't begun yet. And also it needs to be spent on health and social protection, COVID-19 related expenditure. In relation otherwise, there are daily press releases that are available on the President's media website or the President's website, which provides information about who is doing what. And so there's a picture of what is being spent otherwise and by whom. And I think I might leave it there and formally bring this session to a close. May I take this opportunity to thank all 5 of you, Ambika, Iromi, Melinda, Rasika and Brai. Thank you very much for, in some ways, outlining key issues. And I know if we had more time, we'd have gone into detail, but this could be a start of a conversation. And there are some amazing ideas and solutions that each of you have shared. Thank you also being frank for identifying challenges and shortcomings. From the point of view of WFD and the Westminster Foundation for Democracy, we will get back to you with some of this so that we can take this further with you. We will also want to share this with other stakeholders and not just Colombo-based. I think that came out very clearly that there are significant differences in how some of these challenges and solutions will work across the island. Once again, may I take this opportunity to thank you all. And as soon as this is ready for online uploading, I will be in contact with all of you. Thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you, Priyanka.
Thanks, Priyanka.